Kia ora koutou malo, talofa lava, whakalofi lahi atu, kia ora ana. Thank you so much for having us here today. I'll do a couple of little introductions because there'll be people sitting at the front of the room that some of whom you'll know and some of them you might not know. So you'll all know Carmel Cepoloni, the MP for Kelston, the MP for this area. Sitting next to her is the MP for Tamaki Makaurau, that's Penny Henare. And Romy Agata, thank you Romy, one of our candidates is sitting in the front row as well, so a big warm welcome to him too. And then otherwise there's a few people from the media who have joined us as well, but I'm going to be talking directly to all of you this morning, but they're just a little bit interested in what we're going to announce here today. I've just got a really quick question for all of you. You know, who's got a bit of a plan for what they're going to do when you finish school? Who's got a little bit of a plan, a little bit of an idea of what they might do? So a few of you. So who's still thinking about it, still working on what they might do? A few of you. Yep. So now I've got another question, and this is one that I do specifically often when I come and talk to girls' schools. Who's got a dream job? Something they absolutely know that they would love to do. Put up your hand if you've got a dream job. Dream job. Something that you know that if you did that every single day, you'd be happy. Of course it's politics, right? Everyone wants to be an MP? No way. Okay, so a few of you have a dream job. Okay, put up your hand if that dream job is what you think you're going to end up doing. Do you think you're going to end up doing that dream job? Where are the hands? Few of you. Few of you. Only reason I wanted to start with that question, good on you, because you put up your hand and it was strong. That's good. The only reason I ask that question is often when I go into schools, and I do that in a co-ed school, I'll often have a whole group of people say, yep, got the dream job, and I'll say, okay, is that what you're going to end up doing? Yep, definitely. Definitely going to be an All Black. You know, I notice that there's this confidence sometimes in our school leaders, particularly amongst boys, that I don't always see amongst our girls. And I just really want to press upon you just that really quick message that if you've got goals and aspirations about what you want to do, please don't default back to a plan B. Stick with that focus about what's possible right from the beginning. Things might not work out, but they definitely won't work out if you give up on the idea that you can achieve it. I may or may not have some personal experience in that, but we won't go into that today. So I just wanted to share that little message with all of you. One of the things, though, that we wanted to talk to you about today, though, was about preparing for when you guys do find yourself leaving school and going out into the workplace. Because one of the messages that we get a lot, and I get it not just from people who are employing people, but I hear it from sometimes young people, people in school, around the kinds of things you learn in school. So lots of it's absolutely fantastic, really preparing you for the next stage, but maybe we could do a little bit more to help prepare you with perhaps some really practical skills that employers tell us are really interested in you all having. So we know, for instance, that a lot of our employees tell us, actually, the young people that we're getting, they've got a lot of skills, but not always the ones that we're looking for. And we also know that, for instance, 70% of entry-level jobs require basic things like a driver's license. Who here, roughly 16, who here is learning to drive? Few hands. Who here wants to learn to drive? Who thinks they'll need to know how to drive? Yeah, okay. Put those hands up again. Who here thinks they will need to know how to drive? Yeah, lots of you, but lots of you still aren't. What's one of the reasons you're not? It's expensive. Yeah, it is expensive, especially if you fail, because it's expensive twice. You know, I still remember when I went to learn to drive, my father was a policeman, so quite scary when you've got someone like a policeman teaching you how to drive. First thing I ever drove was a tractor on my farm, the little orchard we had at home. I crashed it a couple of times. Luckily, that wasn't part of the driving test. But I still remember how much practice I had to put in and how my mum would get so nervous that she wanted someone else to teach me because she found it really, really stressful. And I also remember doing defensive driving courses because back when I was at school, My high school would open up in the evening to teach us defensive driving. Schools didn't run in my day from 9 till 3. They opened in the evening so we could do extra adult and community education, and that's something we want to bring back. So all of you here have lots of you have put up your hands and say you think you need to learn how to drive. Well, I'm here today to tell you that Labour wants to help you learn how to drive. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that you have access to 5 free lessons so that you don't necessarily have to rely on mum and dad who might be like my mum and a little bit worried about taking on that job, that you can have someone who's professional to help you with that. That we also want you to have access to free defensive driving courses. And we want to make sure that we cover the cost of that learner's licence and that restricted licence to make sure that you guys can leave school work ready with a driver's licence if that's what you choose to do. So that is what we're going to do. Does that sound good? Yeah. Does that sound good? And one of the reasons we're so keen on this as well is because we know there's a lot of young people who do need to drive. Often it's for work or for training. And if they haven't got their licence, then they end up getting fined for that. And then those fines accumulate and they get worse. And we don't want our young people having to carry the burden of that. So that's a really big focus for us. There's a few other things we want to do as well. I mean, some of those skills that employees talk about, they're about work experience. It's quite hard to get work experience when you're in school. But we've seen some programs offered by places like Comet that provide workplace experience. And that's one of the things we also want to make sure that's on offer in schools as well. And in some places, they've even gone as far as having young people while they're in school be able to go out and get a bit of experience helping build a house, really practical things. Because not everyone wants to go on to tertiary education. Some want to go on to apprenticeships. So we're focused on how we can create pathways that make that a little bit easier while you're still in school. There's 2 more things that we also want to do. How much have you guys learned about politics at school? How much have you learned about voting, about your rights, and about how democracy works? Probably when you first came in, probably in social studies. Would you have learnt a bit there? Just a little bit there. But that's probably quite a while ago. And so you'll be heading into being able to vote quite a few years after you have civic education. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that in every school we are teaching you about your rights. We're teaching you about your democracy, about why it's so important that you use your voice. And we want to use people like the Electoral Commission to come in and help schools teach that part of our curriculum because it is so important. Do you know how many young people didn't vote last election? The equivalent of Hamilton City. The equivalent of Hamilton City of people under the age of 24 did not go out and vote. And I think that means that you didn't have a voice. So it's so important that we make sure that you have that opportunity, that you know everything you need to know to go into those elections and have your say. Sometimes you're going to think that we're doing a good job and sometimes you're going to think we're doing a bad job, but the most important thing is you send us that message. So that's why civic education is so important for us as well. And then there's one last bit. Financial literacy. How often have you guys talked about things like budgeting, how credit card works, how loans work? What happens if you get a student loan? What happens if you sign up to a tenancy agreement? Have you ever had those conversations in school? How many of you think you're going to need to know that when you leave? Yeah. We want you to have a chance to learn about all of those things. We want you to know about your rights, how to get ahead, how to make sure that you don't get in any of those traps that exist out there when it comes to things like financing and credit cards, because we want you to be ready for what the world's going to throw at you, but mostly for the good stuff, not the stuff that can really hold you back. So calling all of this our School Leavers Toolkit. The only part of it that we want to make sure everyone is exposed to is civics and learning about the way democracy works. The rest of it's your choice. We'll make sure that every school is offering it, but you get to decide the bits that will help you. If you think you want to get a driver's license, you decide that and you access that. If you think that you want to learn more about financial literacy, that's your call too, but it will all be there for you. So that's our plan. What do you think? Now, you might have some other issues on your mind. You might have some other questions. Do we have time for that? Should we leave a little bit of time for questions, and you can ask any of us anything that you're interested in? So let me give you that chance. Bold, Carmel says. Anyone want to ask me anything while I'm here? Did I just get saved by a bell? Oh.
As we are all aware that at the moment females are getting paid less than males in similar jobs, what are you as the leader of the Labour Party going to do to address this issue?
Pay equity. What a great question. Is it acceptable that women get paid less for work of equal value than men?
No.
Thank you. Then absolutely we have to do something about that, and we've committed that we will not rest until we resolve pay equity in New Zealand. Now, I grew up around women who were in jobs with low wages, and we're now looking into the fact that a lot of those jobs actually have been undervalued. So you may not have heard of a woman called Christine Bartlett. I want to tell you about Christine Bartlett. She's a home care worker, an aged care worker. So she works with some of our most vulnerable people, making sure all their needs are met. It's a really tough, skilled job. And Christine Bartlett was one of the people that championed a case to question whether or not people who were working with those most vulnerable people were being paid fairly, because they were on really low wages. And after a long drawn-out battle alongside her union, she won. So now, as a consequence of Christine Bartlett, 50,000 people are going to get an increase in their wages. What a hero. What an absolute hero she was. I hope you remember her name, because it should remain in history, I think. The challenge for us now is how do we make sure we do that for other people who haven't had their work fairly paid. So the government at the moment has a law that they've put before Parliament to try and help with that. We think it won't help. We think it'll make things a little bit worse. So we've said, look, we want to try again. We won't vote for that one. We've got some alternative ideas. But regardless, our end goal should be that all women should be fairly paid for the work that they do, and that should happen in my lifetime. It most certainly should happen in yours.
You've come a long way to now be the leader of the Labour Party. Are you ready to be Prime Minister?
I have. Quite a lot's happened in a short space of time, hasn't it? I was made deputy in March. And now I'm leader. And there have been some pretty exceptional circumstances that have led to that. But I'm absolutely ready. I'm absolutely ready. And not just to be leader, but to be Prime Minister. It's a good clap. Thanks for that. Yeah.
So you do work in a male-dominant environment. Can you describe your journey as a female in a male-dominant environment, and what advice would you give to us as young?
Yeah. Well, that point that I was making at the beginning around actually so much of it has to do with the confidence that you have in yourself. And so, yeah, you're going to come up against, in whatever workplace you end up in, there'll always be barriers, things that you come up against. But the one thing that you have control over is whether you're confident in yourself to take on those challenges. So no matter what role I'm playing in the future, I will always try and send that message to our young women. Please believe in yourself. And if you're struggling to believe in yourself, believe in the faith that people around you have in you. So when they ask you to take on a job, do it. Say yes. And that's the kind of confidence I hope our generation of young women will have, because that'll get you a very long way. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
How is Labour Party going to help us with tertiary education?
Good question. How many of you think that you'll either go into university or polytechnic or an apprenticeship? Who thinks that next that might be what they might go into? Okay, so that's, of those of you who have a bit of a plan, a few of you are going to go into that. We're worried about the debt that young people accumulate by going on to the next level of study. And we've always had a belief that the education you're getting now, benefits all of us. Do you agree with that? Yeah. And so why does that just suddenly stop once you finish at high school? You know, our belief is that actually in the modern world where 46% of jobs are likely to be replaced or gone because of automation, all of us You, me, Penny, Carmel, we're all going to have to keep learning. Education will be a conveyor belt, not a destination. So we need to make it easier for people to come on and come off. So people who right now work in jobs that might not be, for instance, around in a few years' time, they might need to retrain. I always say my mum was a bookkeeper, never went to university. There'll be a future where she may need to go back and into education if she wants to keep working. So what we want to do is make that easier. So we have talked about making the first 3 years of study, once you leave high school, the first 3 years of your study free. Because we think that would make a big difference for you. Now, that is something that it's a big aspiration for us. That's a big thing to do. That's a really big shift. So we've had to phase that in over time. But our goal ultimately is that we will have, our goal is for free education in New Zealand because that's what we believe in. Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise I'm mindful. Am I holding you up from class? No, that was quite quick. I am holding you up from class, aren't I? Question? Oh, yes. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. The question was about homelessness. Is this something that people are worried about this election, something you guys want to hear us talking about more? Thank you for that question. I often say to people when they ask me, are you going to do something that's specifically for young people? And I always remind them when I go to schools, young people ask me as much about other people and what we're doing for other people as they do about themselves. So when it comes to homelessness, I most certainly have noticed, and I'm sure all of us has noticed, a real visible increase in the number of people who are obviously without shelter. You notice it. And yes, we've had it in our CBD, the noticeable face of homelessness, but it's much bigger than that. People who couch surf, who are living in shared accommodation, perhaps a family's garage. For young people, we particularly know that there's quite a number of young people who won't have a fixed abode, who'll surf around different families' homes because they don't have anywhere permanent to live. That means that we now currently have some of the worst homelessness stats in the OECD. So the countries we compare ourselves to, we're doing really poorly. Now, if you ask us, we would say that we think housing is a right. Everyone should have a place to live. Everyone should be warm and dry. Because if you're not, it affects everything. It affects your health. It affects your ability to learn. So that's why when you see on our billboards things that talk about houses, and when you hear us talk about housing, that's why we see it as really critical to everything. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we've got a whole list of things because there's no one silver bullet. There's lots of things that we need to do to fix this problem, but one of them is we just need to build houses. And I'm from the Labour Party. We were one of the first parties in the 1930s to say, actually, we need to house our people. And so we just started building houses. And there's still houses that you see around our communities today. We think we need to do that again. We need to build more state houses. We need to build affordable houses for people to buy. We need to say to people who live offshore, who don't really have an interest in living in New Zealand, we're sorry. We need to make sure that people living here have a home. So you cannot buy in our market. Those are some of the things that we think we need to do. But actually, it's about just getting on with it. The question at the back there. Hey. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Great question. Particular passion of mine, and actually lots of members of our caucus as well. Again, we want to feel proud of New Zealand, proud of where we rank internationally, don't we? We're small, but we've in the past really carved out a place as being world leading on a lot of things. But the things that we're at the moment really lagging behind on are things like homelessness and youth suicide in particular. So we've been talking about what we'd like to do, and we've been looking a lot at young people as a place to start. So one of the things that happens a little bit at the moment is some schools, don't know about your school, but some schools have comprehensive youth health services. which are fantastic. And we know that when schools have that, it makes a big difference. You see a drop by up to 2/3 of the incidence of mental health issues amongst our young people. 2/3. That should be in every school. So that's what we've said. We don't care what decile the school is. Every young person should have access to a nurse, a counsellor, someone they trust to talk to when they need to talk to them. And so that's why they should be in the school, based in the school, be part of the school, not just coming and going. So we want to support your teachers as well, because they do. I know if there's someone that you trust, that you might be inclined to talk to them. We need to put extra support around the work that they do too. You talk about youth mental health education. We had an amazing petition brought by a young person to Parliament on that issue, and we agree. Have the ability to just talk about things that we can do to just ease that pressure, particularly on young people, and build awareness. Why wouldn't we do that? Yeah. So thank you. Maybe that's it. Thank you so much for having us this morning. Really appreciate your time. We'll love to stick around and answer any more questions that you might have, just in case you were too shy. But my very best wishes for the rest of your school year. And if I could leave one little thing, who's finding this year pretty stressful? Bit stressful. Yeah. I hear you. I mean, we're with you as well. This year's quite stressful for us too, different reasons. But, you know, when I was at school, we were assessed a bit differently. You guys are assessed a lot more than we were in our day, and that's something we're thinking about too. But I can still tell you that when I was in school and in the year that you're in now, it was tough. Don't ever let anyone trivialise the year that you're going through. It will feel hard because it is hard. So don't anyone let you tell you that what you're doing isn't important or tough. What you're feeling is real, but it gets better. It gets better. You know, the fact that here I am as leader of the opposition, 4 weeks out from an election, and I still wouldn't trade places with you for an exam. So there we go. What does that tell you? So good luck, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your year. And please keep making sure that you keep talking to your politicians. They're here for you. They're here to listen to your ideas. You're never too young to share them. So please stay in touch with us. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora koutou.